Hey guys, it's Dr. Speed with drpremed.com and want to inform you guys that schools do not have your best interests at heart nowadays. You guys might be thinking, oh my goodness, that's shocking, that's crazy. How could somebody, a physician who's been through a lot of schooling, undergraduate school, graduate school, medical school, so professional school, go on and say that schools, colleges, and universities don't have your best interests at heart? But it's just a harsh reality of the world that we live in. And a case in point would be with financial aid packages and what schools are doing for their students. And before I even get into the finances of things, I want to just share a little tidbit with you. I know a lawyer, he works in I guess he works in like higher education law, so he works with students who have issues with their colleges and universities and things like that. He would definitely be he's an older gentleman, I would say. And so he said that school and college is a lot different. He goes, in his day and age, when you went to school, the schools had your best interests at heart. They wanted to see students get into school, and they wanted to see the students do well in school, and they wanted ultimately the students to graduate and go on to have successful careers. That's how it was him for undergrad and law school. And he goes, however, things have changed. He has a daughter. His daughter went to medical school, and he's just observed over the time that the climate has changed significantly from the time that he's been in school even to when his daughter was in medical school, where he tells a lot of his clients that he works with that he goes, these schools are different. They're businesses. They're concerned about the bottom line, and they're not concerned about your well-being and your ability to pass your classes and graduate. They're concerned about, are you paying your tuition? Are they getting their money and everything like that from the students and their families? That's the big thing that they have. And so it's just crazy when you hear all these stories and things that are taking place. I want to share a story about collusion at the highest levels of academics that's going to be shocking and appalling. I know previously there was an article out there about schools and their endowments. This is like money that like they invest and they can use for whatever purposes they want. And it's talking about these schools who have multi-billions of dollars worth of endowment funds, yet they're raising tuition and limiting the amount of financial aid that they're offering to their students. Now, does that make any sense whatsoever? That you're going to have billions of dollars of money that's basically going to accrue interest that you're never going to lose money on just because you have so much money stockpiled, but then you have a family, a low income family, let's say they're making less than 80,000 a year, and you're going to raise tuition on them or say that they have to fund a part of their education. Absolutely crazy, makes no sense, and it's just horrible. And another thing that goes into this is you have to think about how financial aid works. Basically, you get a cost of living thing, and then you have student loans, and there's really nothing that's gonna prevent a school from raising their prices, because they always figure like, oh, if a student can't personally cover it, they can get a student loan to afford their education. And we just see how that's going, where prices are going up and up, and people are borrowing more and more money. And just do a case in point, when my dad was going to undergrad, he went to Morgan State University, which is in Baltimore. He was born and raised in Baltimore. And so he lived at home. And he also had a part time job. And being able to live at home, have a part time job, he was able to pay for himself to go to school. And nowadays, any undergrad knows that's like ridiculous to even think or even have conceived the idea of, oh, I'm going to pay to put myself through school. That just doesn't happen anymore. And then I was a political science major in undergrad, so I'm going to tell you a little tidbit. We're going to go off on a tangent with that. There's a former Senate Majority Leader named Harry Reid, and he recently died in the last couple of weeks or so. And he said he grew up dirt poor in Nevada, and then he got his schooling, and then he came to Washington, D.C., and he worked as a Capitol Police officer while also attending law school. So he worked I think during the day or whatever, or either during the day he was at the Capitol Police officer, and then at night he was taking class, or he was working as, or it was the other way around. I forget which way, but that's beside the point. And he went to George Washington University Law School. That's the law school my twin brother went to as well. So, but again, he was another interesting tidbit about that. He's the only person who's actually was a Capitol Police officer who went and then served as a member of Congress. So you got to think about that. It's like very significant in that regard. But think about it. You cannot do that nowadays, because I remember when my brother actually went to George Washington for undergrad and law school. And he had work study job and all of that stuff to pay for his education, also with financial aid. And there would be no way possible that he could work and then have whatever funds he got from working to cover tuition, because I think at the time George Washington was one of the most expensive schools, undergrad schools, to attend. I'm not surprised it wouldn't be the same for the graduate professional schools as well. Just totally how things are changing, where you just can't do that anymore. But you guys are probably wondering, okay, why is Dr. Spears talking about all this finances? What these other people, how they paid for their school? What does it have to do with me? Well, just recently, there was an article that came out, a report about collusion in financial aid for students in undergrad trying to go to school. And I was actually shocked and appalled to hear what was taking place. Apparently, there's something called like need-based financial aid, based on your like filling out the FAFSA tax returns and all of that, where some of these elite institutions would get together on like a quarterly basis and share their financial aid formulas so that everybody would have the same financial aid formula. And so what this meant was, previously what would happen is somebody would get multiple substances to college, let's say that, and they're not rich, so they're not going to be able to afford all their education on their own. They're going to need loans, grants, scholarships, financial aid to cover the cost of their education. So that's fine. And so you have multiple offers. And what the standard practice was, what you would do then is like, okay, I got this offer from school A, and then now I got an acceptance from school B. And now you go back to school A and B and you tell them, I got this offer. What can you guys do to match that? Can you do something better to help me out? Because a lot of times students, they would ultimately make their decision based on the amount of financial aid that they would get, which is smart, pragmatic, makes a lot of sense. And so that's what you could do. I remember even when I was at Northwestern undergrad, and we had students coming to campus, and some that were low income, and they said that, the matter of fact, point blank, they're like, yeah, Northwestern's great, it's cool and everything like that, but I'm going to go to a school that gives me the best financial aid offer, because I don't want to have debt, I don't have loans, and I know my family can't afford it otherwise. And I tell, like, no, it's need-based financial aid, they'll cover what your expenses are. And some students just were like, nope, that's just not going to work for me. I really need to know what, like, the financial aid package, that's going to be the number one decision, that's going to be the deciding factor where I attend. And so it's disappointing, because I'm a Northwestern guy through and through and everything like that. But people have to do what they need to do. And so you just had this article that came out about collusion and basically antitrust and all of this. And then, so there's a lawsuit about that basically the schools are price fixing so that you couldn't compare, because all the schools would have the same financial aid offer, because they got together and decided how much financial aid they were going to offer to students. And so I'm going to just look over here and take a look, because I want to read some names of some of these schools that are involved in this price collusion, price fixing, however you want to call it, in regards to financial aid for tuition, undergrad, and all of that stuff. So there was Yale, there's Georgetown, there was my school, Northwestern University, and surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, but my mom actually went to Northwestern as well. And so then I called her up and I told her about what was going on, and she just didn't want to hear it, because she just thinks, Northwestern is the greatest thing in the world and it's not a big deal or whatever. But she went to school at a different time when the financial aid was a lot different and all of that. But if you have somebody who has loans and all of that's a big factor. And so then other schools included, besides those three I named, included Brown University, California Institute of Technology, the University of Chicago, Columbia University, Cornell University, Dartmouth, Duke, Emory University, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, aka MIT, the University of Notre Dame, the University of Pennsylvania, Rice University, and Vanderbilt University. And so this is going on right now. And guess what? And so this is a lawsuit that's taking place right now. And I think it's right now there's five people who have attended these schools who are currently like bringing this lawsuit right now. And so the lawyers are saying that right now 170,000 former undergraduate students who received partial financial aid at the schools that I just mentioned, going back up to 18 years, may be eligible to join the suit as plaintiffs. And it's funny enough, what was it? I graduated Northwestern in 2007, so it's been a while, going on what, 15 years or so. So I'm in that because when I started, it was in what was it, 2003. So I got a couple years in within that 18-year time period because I'm getting up there in age, you guys. So that's that. So I would be included in that. So just funnily or jokingly enough, I decided to reach out to one of my classmates from undergrad or whatever, and I sent her a message like, "Hey, you hear about this little lawsuit that's going on? We might be affected or impacted by that in some way, shape, or form." And then jokingly, you know how you had those commercials of like from those lawyers, if you or anybody in your family has been affected by what was it? They use like asbestos, mesothelioma, and all of that stuff. They'll do those. You may be entitled to compensation. And so I was joking around with him, like, oh, yeah, we're going to get an email. If you or somebody you know went to Northwestern University or one of these other like 17 universities in the last 18 years and received partial financial aid, you may be eligible to become a plaintiff in our case where I don't know what type of I don't know what type of relief or whatever judgment they're going to do on that for that, but that's probably something that's going to happen down the pipeline or whatever. I would not be opposed to receiving some type of check or whatever type of compensation these lawyers and everybody does in regards to that. But I think it's just something to be aware of what's happening, what's taking place, and all of that, where you guys are at, and you want to basically limit the amount of financial aid that you have to repay. So loans, you want to nix those as much as possible because sometimes I look at my student loans and like I'm making payments on this every month and it's like the balance isn't moving down fast enough. It seems like with interest and everything else and the amount of loans you have, it's just not doing anything. And even going along with that with financial aid, I remember I was in grad school and there was something, I don't know what it was. I think it was doing an extra program that was going to cost a couple of $1,000s. And I really didn't want to do it or whatever. And I was speaking to one of my professors, and they're like, "What's a couple additional $1,000 when you're this far in the hole, already at six figures of student loans, I think, or whatever?" And you're like, "Oh yeah, you know what? That really is a big deal." But you're like a young person in undergrad or just starting out in grad school, and you're really not thinking about the consequences and implications of that. But then once you get up in age or you get to a point where you start paying back those student loans, you're like, oh, wow, that probably wasn't the smartest, most astute financial decision I could have done. But you know what? I'm not going to complain about it. I'm not going to have any qualms about it because ultimately this education allowed me to do what I want to do, become a physician, graduate med school, and all of that. And I know that's what you guys want, but I'm just trying to help you guys see the other end of the perspective and just kind of make sure that you're not going to make some of the mistakes that I made or other people have done in this process of trying to finance their medical education and all of those things, because I am definitely not a money finance guy or whatever. And again, I have a twin brother, so when it comes to taxes and all that good stuff, I'm like, hey George, can you take a look at this? Can you help me figure all of this stuff out and everything like that? So that's what I do in regards to that. But you really want to be on top of your finances and look for scholarships, look for grants, and just find different ways to fund your education that does not entail loans which have to be paid back. And I would use loans as a last resort. So I just wanted to kind of share that, put that out there so you guys have an understanding what's going on and everything like that. And now I know like the medical schools are really trying to do things to like offset the cost of your education. And even like you can do like what was it, national health. And I know we had some people in our med school that were in the military, national, I think health service corp or something like that was another thing, where like even if you work in primary care, you give so much time back and they pay for your education based on how much year of service you're going to give. Same with like the military. Those are alternatives that you can do. And then we also see those stories in the news around graduation where you got this famous, super wealthy billionaire speaker who comes to college to do the graduation speech. And at the end, he goes, oh, you know what? I'm going to pay off all the loans of all the graduates. And everybody's so excited. And then sometimes they say, even if the parents took out loans, I'm going to cover those too for their students as well. And it's just a huge, like, exciting thing to happen. And I know some of the Ivy League schools for medicine, I think it was like NYU, I'm not sure, they decide that they're going to get rid of any type of loan. It's going to be grant or tuition free. I forget. You guys can look up into that. And I think once one school starts doing that, other schools start doing that. So that's something to look into as well. But just be aware of your options when it comes to how you're going to finance your medical education. I just wanted to share some information so you guys know what's happening, and then just know like, yes, you want to go to school, you want to get a good education, you want to get to the next level wherever it is, whether you're trying to get into undergrad, whether you need to go to grad school, whether you're in med school and you're graduating so you become a physician. Just know that, as the lawyer said, these schools do not have your best interests at heart. They are businesses. They're looking at the numbers. They're looking at accounts receivable, accounts payable. They want to be in the black. They don't want to be in the red. And they're going to do things that are going to benefit the school and the university and not the student per se. That's why they have legal department. And I'm sure even with this thing with COVID, you guys are aware of like all the sanctions and stuff that are coming down. Like if you do this, what was, I think there was even like a case in like Boston with some of the students. They were told if you come back to school for right at the beginning of the pandemic, you guys can't have parties, you can't associate with in groups of people and all of that. And then some students decide like, oh, they're going to break the rules. And then what happened, they got kicked out of school or suspended for a period of time, and tuition like 30, 40, $50,000 was not going to be reimbursed. And then these students, these kids, let's say, well, they're adults, 18, 17, 18, 19, whatever, and then they decide like, oh, we're going to go to court because that's a lot of money. Think about that. You get kicked out of school and for less than like a semester, and you're on the hook for $50,000. You're definitely going to go to court to fight that. And the schools obviously have their lawyers and everything like that trying to advocate for the school side. Like, we had a policy in place, the students signed a contract, they need to be responsible, and these are the consequences of doing those, engage in that type of activity and not following guidelines and putting others at risk, not only themselves but the whole university and the campus community. And so like that's what it is. Like It's just a legal minefield that you have to navigate nowadays when it comes to your higher education. And you just got to really look over everything and just know, like, what is it? Cross your T's and what dot your I's, whatever that thing is, watch your P's and Q's, whatever that saying is when it comes to like your higher education and stuff that you're doing. Because I remember even in med school, what was it? We had all of this paperwork we had to sign and fill out, and I don't think everybody like took the time to read it and go through it. And then if you're gonna have a dispute or something like that, they're gonna be like, "You're an intelligent individual. You're a medical student. You went to medical school. We find it very hard to fathom that you didn't understand or know what you were signing." And then what happens then? They're gonna like rule in the school's favor, whatever that document that you signed said. So just be aware of those type of things, and hopefully we get some resolution regards to this collusion in regards to financial aid packages, because that's crazy. That's something that I never would have thought or considered. And I remember I met one of the what was admissions directors when I was going through the process of applying to undergrad at Northwestern University and all of that. And I got buddies with him and everything like that. But I guess he didn't handle the financial aid aspect, so he wouldn't have anything to say about that. But like just to think like this is what goes on behind the scenes, that schools get together and decide that we're going to share our formulas and algorithms for deciding financial aid package, so that across the board it's going to be one rate, and that way a student couldn't even get a better offer from a different school. It's going to be just set in stone, and that's what it is. That's like shocking and basically blows my mind, but that's where we're at in today's day and age, going back I guess the last 18 years or so, based on this lawsuit that's coming about. So just want to share that with you, and let me guys know if you guys have any thoughts, comments, or concerns in regards to financial aid, and if any of this makes any sense. Are you guys shocked by this? How are you handling the financing of your education? Have you had any conversation with your parents and stuff like that? Because I know some students will say, "Oh yeah, my parents will cover my undergrad, but anything beyond that, I have to cover that myself or whatever." Or you could be in a lucky position like myself. Well, not my, no, this is not myself. This is people I know. I'm absolutely not in this position, but I'll tell you this. I had some classmates in medical school. I remember my graduation, my mom was like, "Oh my goodness, I didn't know how many of your classmates have parents or family members who are also physicians." I'm like, yeah, that's what it is. It's expensive to be in med school, and it takes a lot for that. But the crazy thing is, like, speaking to one of my classmates or whatever, and they're like, "Oh yeah, my parents just write a check to the school every year to cover tuition." And but they tell me it's a loan that I'm gonna have to pay them back, so we don't have to get the banks or anything involved. It's very informal process and things like that. So I'm like, oh my goodness, that's crazy. Your parents just have like $80,000 set aside each year for your medical education plus cost of living, and to get you like a new car and things like that. Yeah, yeah, that's what they do and everything like that. I'm like, oh, okay. And you know how that works though. Then it's like, okay, you your parents are giving you this loan. Well, they're paying this money for you to go to med school. They're telling you it's a loan, but you know what happens? Classmates, they get to graduation. Parents are so excited, they're happy. Their son or daughter, or my classmate, they graduate medical school, they match into a residency. Mom and dad so proud and happy. So you know what they say? They're like, "Oh, don't worry about that loan. You don't need to pay it off. It's a gift. We're so happy that you decided to that you're in position now, so don't even worry about it. We're just excited for you in the next step in your career and journey." That's what usually happens with that. So if you're a lucky person to be in that position, that's like amazing that you won't have any like debt or loans or anything like that. So that's great and everything like that. And I know, last point, I know one thing that people do, like it's before they start grad school or any of the financial aid stuff, it's all based on like your taxes, your FAFSA, and all of that, and like your assets. So I think this was more prevalent with the people who were getting their MBAs. They wanted to reduce the amount of assets that they had so that they would be eligible for more financial aid for their higher education. And so these guys and women obviously also like more MBAs, so they're like very business savvy, business minded. They would go out and buy luxury cars, your BMW, your entry level BMW, Audi, Mercedes, Lexus, because at the time it's between $30,000 and $50,000 of assets that you now don't have that can't be calculated into your financial aid. So you're going to get more money, and at the same time you're going to get a nice new vehicle and I guess you're going to do it with a house because you're going to have to pay. That's usually considered an asset in certain regards, but they would definitely do that with vehicles to reduce that. So it's like a win-win. You get a new car, but then you also are going to get more financial aid, which basically covers your car costs and everything like that. So that's one thing. So I'm running on a tangent. Just wanted to share some things about finances and all of that stuff in regards to money, higher education, financial aid, and this lawsuit that's working its way through the courts that you guys should be aware of, and just even opening your eyes up to something that you can consider when you're applying to school and where you're going to attend based on like finances and all of that. So just make sure you guys are in a good situation and not only thinking about your education, but the cost of your education and thinking a long-term approach, because you don't want to be a bright-eyed, bushy young person like myself and not really think about what's going to happen down the road when you got to pay back all these loans and all that stuff with interest that was occurred over the years and everything like that. So just watch out for that and do what you can to make sure that you have grants, scholarships, and other forms of aid that you don't have to pay back. So again, Dr. Spears here with drpremed.com. Take care and enjoy.